Tonight, we're going to drift back together into a time when Christmas still glowed through frosted glass, and the world hummed in soft, predictable patterns of warmth and hope. It is the 1950s, and America is breathing again, slowly, gratefully, after years of worry and war. Streetlights shimmer through snow that falls so gently it seems to be listening to its own descent. And somewhere in the distance a radio croons the low velvet voice of Bing Crosby. You can almost smell the faint sweetness of coal smoke and peppermint drifting together in the air, the kind of scent that carries both memory and comfort in equal measure. So before you settle in, dim your lights, let your thoughts quiet themselves, and let's walk together into a December evening that feels like a dream half remembered. A world where hope glows behind every curtain, and Christmas really means something simple, steady and bright. You start on a small town street, where each window is a little theatre of light. The sidewalks glisten faintly under a dusting of snow, and the sound of shoes crunching against the frozen ground makes a rhythm that feels almost musical. Every few steps, the scent of roasting chestnuts mixes with the cool iron tang of the cold, a combination that belongs entirely to winter. Neon diner signs hum above the rooftops, their colors soft against the white haze of the season, and from behind frosted windows you can see silhouettes moving. People laughing, talking, waving, living. It's an America that feels safe enough to exhale again. The war is over, the economy is rising, and though not everything is perfect, there's a shared belief that tomorrow will probably be better. That simple belief is its own kind of magic. Electric lights have become part of that magic. Whole streets sparkle for the first time with store-bought bulbs, tiny glass orbs filled with the warm hum of filaments, each one trembling faintly as though alive. Some families, still careful with money, make their own decorations instead, stringing popcorn with patient hands or folding paper chains in bright, uneven loops. The air holds a quiet mix of thrift and creativity, of families doing their best to make something beautiful with what they have. You pause under a lamppost, its metal cold against your gloved hand, and look up to see a large tinfoil star trembling in the breeze. Its light flickers for a second, then steadies, glowing like a promise against the dark. Down the street, shop windows bloom with wreaths and ribbon, painted glass lettering spelling out Merry Christmas in looping strokes. A few are simple, just fir branches and a bit of tinsel, but others display elaborate scenes, a model train circling paper mountains, a snowman family carved from cotton wool, a toy robot marching endlessly in place. Children stop to watch, faces pressed against glass, eyes wide in that particular 1950s kind of wonder, where the future and imagination seem to meet. Many of these displays were designed by local clerks or artists rather than professionals. They were community efforts, built with glue, cardboard, and late-night laughter after closing hours. And though imperfect, they carry the warmth of human touch, something that still hums through the glass even now. A few blocks ahead, the faint sound of carolers begins to rise, slightly off-key but full of heart. Their breath puffs like smoke as they sing, the notes curling into the cold and fading before they reach the next corner. One voice leads, a little stronger, perhaps the town librarian or a teacher, and the rest follow softly behind. You pause to listen. The harmonies aren't perfect, but they don't need to be. In this moment, the unevenness is part of the beauty, the way a record sometimes crackles or a radio fades at the edges. The melody floats through the dark, landing gently on rooftops dusted with snow, and you feel your shoulders loosen, your breath slowing to match the rhythm of the season. As you keep walking, the world narrows into details, a porch light burning yellow beside a wreath made from pine and ribbon, a child's mitten dropped on the step, frozen in place like a small sculpture, footprints leading up to a door, where laughter spills through the cracks. Everything feels close and safe and ordinary in the best possible way. The 1950s were full of such ordinary miracles, fresh bread cooling on a kitchen counter, new cars gleaming in driveways, radios glowing on mantelpieces. And though nostalgia often polishes these memories to a shine, beneath it all was something real, the quiet gratitude of people who had lived through hard years and finally found themselves home for Christmas. You turn a corner and find yourself standing before a row of department store windows lit like stages, each one a story in motion. Inside one, a model Santa waves from a mechanical sleigh, his reindeer bobbing on invisible wires. In another, mannequins dressed as shoppers carry boxes tied with impossible ribbons. These displays aren't just for show. They are symbols of a new age of abundance, a nation learning to celebrate not just survival but prosperity. Historians later call it the birth of consumer Christmas, but in this moment it doesn't feel cynical at all. It feels hopeful. Each ribbon, each glittering ornament, is part of a quiet collective prayer for stability, for joy, for a better future, wrapped in gold foil and good intentions. And so you stand there for a while, your reflection blending with the display until you can't tell which world you belong to, the real or the remembered. Snowflakes drift down through the soft light, catching for a heartbeat on your coat before melting away. Somewhere a church bell rings, slow and distant, and the sound seems to fold the whole town into a single deep breath. You let that sound settle inside you, a lullaby from a half-century ago, carrying the gentle truth that Christmas has always been less about what you have and more about what you hold close. You step from the quiet snowfall into a small suburban home glowing with the soft, golden warmth that only December light can carry. The air shifts immediately, from crisp and clean to thick with the scent of vanilla and something faintly buttery that makes you feel instantly safe. The door closes behind you, and for a moment all the sounds of the outside world fade away, replaced by the hum of a refrigerator, the ticking of a wall clock, and the faint, almost musical creak of floorboards under gentle footsteps. You find yourself in a kitchen that feels like the heart of the decade, cheerful, tidy, and alive with motion. The linoleum floor gleams in pale mint and white. The counters curve softly at the edges, and the pastel oven door glows faintly from within like a small domestic sun. A woman stands near the counter, her sleeves rolled neatly, her apron dusted with flour. She moves with quiet confidence, a rhythm that comes from years of repetition. Fold, press, turn, lift, transforming dough into something warm and sweet. The light catches the pattern of holly leaves stitched along the edge of her apron, and as she reaches for a cookie cutter shaped like a bell, you notice how precise her movements are, almost ceremonial. Each press leaves a perfect shape behind. Stars, trees, gingerbread men, tiny wreaths, and soon the tray before her looks like a map of holiday tradition, carefully arranged and ready for the oven. In the doorway, two children hover, their excitement impossible to contain. They bounce softly on their toes, trying to stay quiet, but failing with every muffled giggle. They are wrapped in thick sweaters, their cheeks rosy from the cold, and they watch their mother's every movement as if she were performing a kind of magic. One child whispers something about Santa, the other nods solemnly, as though confirming a sacred truth. The mother glances back with a knowing smile but says nothing. She doesn't need to. In this kitchen, silence is a language all its own, filled with understanding and affection. The timer dings and she opens the oven. A wave of scented heat drifts through the room, heavy with vanilla and sugar, and something you can only describe as comfort itself. The cookies emerge golden and soft, their edges just beginning to crisp, their centers tender. She places them gently on a cooling rack, and the children inch closer, drawn by gravity and hunger. One of them sneaks a fingerful of frosting from the bowl on the table, pink and shimmering in the light, then looks up with the wide-eyed innocence of someone pretending they haven't done anything at all. The mother pretends not to notice, wiping her hands on a towel and humming a tune that sounds faintly like Silent Night. You look around the kitchen and see the quiet beauty of the era everywhere. The fridge is covered with postcards held up by tiny fruit-shaped magnets. The radio hums softly in the corner, and beside the sink a small potted poinsettia leans toward the window, its red petals glowing against the frost outside. On the table sits a bowl of tangerines, their skins smooth and bright, and beside them a loaf of bread still cooling from the morning's baking. These are not luxuries but rituals, little acts of care that define the season more than any decoration ever could. On the stove, a pot of cocoa steams gently, its surface shimmering with a thin film that swirls when stirred. You pour yourself a cup and cradle it in your hands. The warmth seeps slowly through your palms, through your sleeves, and into your chest. The first sip is rich, faintly bitter, and perfectly sweet. The taste of a simpler world where recipes are written on paper cards and passed down through generations. The children finally earn their cookies, biting into them with the kind of joy that leaves crumbs across the table and frosting on their noses. The mother laughs softly, shaking her head as she wipes the counter clean again. In this room, time slows. The radio fades into a crackling carol. The refrigerator hum deepens. The oven cools with a gentle sigh. You realize that this kitchen, like so many others across 1950s America, isn't just where food is made. It's where love is practiced in secret forms, where care is measured in teaspoons and laughter in batches, where Christmas isn't something that happens outside in the snow, but here, in the glow of an oven light, in the clatter of mixing bowls, in the small, steady rhythm of hands working dough. You linger for a while, letting the warmth settle into you. The smell of sugar and spice clings faintly to your clothes. Somewhere deeper in the house, a radio program begins with a cheerful announcer's voice, and the children race toward it, their socks slipping on the floor. The mother watches them go, her smile softening, then turns back to her cookies. Dozens now, cooling in perfect rows. The light catches on the sugar crystals and makes them sparkle as if dusted with frost. You take one last slow breath and step toward the doorway, ready to see what awaits beyond the kitchen. The living room, the soft hum of the television, the warmth of a family gathered close under the glow of their Christmas tree. You step softly from the warmth of the kitchen into the hush of a living room bathed in pale blue light, the kind that only an early television could cast. Fragile and flickering yet strangely hypnotic. The furniture glows faintly in the reflection, polished wooden cabinets, smooth upholstery, the faint shimmer of tinsel catching the edge of the screen's light. The room feels alive but tranquil, like a heartbeat slowed to a peaceful rhythm after a long day. At the center of it all stands the television, heavy and box-like, a monument to modern wonder. Its rounded screen hums with quiet energy, the glass slightly curved like the surface of a fishbowl holding tiny, moving people inside. You can almost hear the warmth of the vacuum tubes behind it, that faint electrical buzz that hums like a lullaby beneath the broadcast. The family sits gathered around, the father leaning forward slightly in his armchair, one hand resting on the dial as though his touch alone keeps the signal clear. The mother in her rocker knitting needles clicking in time with the music. The children sprawled on the rug, eyes wide, cheeks glowing, completely enchanted. The program on the screen is a Christmas special, its black and white world shimmering like a dream. A choir sings softly, their faces haloed by the studio lights, and you can hear the faint rustle of sheet music, the polished tones of an announcer introducing the next song. The family leans in just a little closer, as if the television itself is breathing warmth into the room. There is something sacred about the moment, not religious exactly, but reverent, as though they all understand how rare and precious this stillness is. The youngest child holds a tangerine in both hands, its skin shining under the lamp. The father reaches over to peel it slowly, the citrus scent mingling with the faint electrical tang of the television and the woody fragrance of the Christmas tree. It's a quiet sensory symphony, oranges and pine and static, small notes that together define an entire generation's December nights. The tree itself stands proudly in the corner, its branches heavy with ornaments made of delicate glass, some slightly chipped but still loved, each one carrying a memory, a first Christmas together, a baby's first year, a gift from a friend long gone. The soft hum of the lights wraps the tree in a steady golden aura, and the reflection dances across the window pane like a private snowfall. A commercial break begins, cheerful and innocent. A smiling woman in pearls shows how instant coffee can impress unexpected guests. A toy robot marches stiffly across a table. A voice promises that a new refrigerator will change your life. The family smiles without irony. These are promises meant to comfort, not to deceive, and they do in their own small way. The father adjusts the antenna with practiced patience, tapping the side of the set once, then twice. The picture sharpens and everyone exhales as if a spell has been restored. The mother's knitting slows. The needles pause mid-air, gleaming softly in the television light. Her gaze drifts to the tree, then to her children, then back to the glowing screen. The father glances at her just once, a silent acknowledgement that the moment, however ordinary, is quietly perfect. Outside, snow presses against the window, soft and heavy, muffling the world beyond. Inside, everything glows: the television, the tinsel, the lamp's golden shade, the soft white of the children's socks resting on the rug. The choir on the screen begins again, their voices clear and gentle, filling the room with music that feels both distant and familiar. You can feel the warmth of the radiator under the window, hear the faint ticking of the clock on the mantel, and smell the cocoa still lingering in the air from the kitchen. The children start to yawn one by one, their heads drooping onto pillows, their eyes blinking slowly as the last song plays. The mother sets down her knitting, the father lowers the volume a little, and for a few long moments the only sound left is the soft rise and fall of the choir's final notes. When the show ends, the father stands and turns the dial. The picture shrinks to a glowing dot, then fades into darkness, leaving only the reflection of the tree's lights flickering gently in the glass. The room feels different now, quieter, slower, wrapped in the kind of peace that doesn't need to be spoken aloud. The mother gathers the blanket around her children, the father pokes at the fireplace, and a few sparks rise and vanish into the chimney. Outside, the wind shifts, brushing lightly against the house, as if to remind it that the world is still turning out there in the snow. You linger in the doorway for a moment, watching this small scene of contentment, a family in their circle of light, safe and warm and unaware that they are creating the kind of memory the world will long for decades later. Then, slowly you step back into the night. The air greets you with a gentle chill, crisp enough to wake your senses but soft enough not to bite. Snowflakes whirl lazily past the street lamps, and in the distance, the faint hum of another television echoes from a neighboring house. The whole neighborhood feels like one shared dream, 1,000 glowing windows, each with its own quiet story unfolding behind the curtains. You walk slowly down the sidewalk, your breath rising in soft white curls, and you realize that the sound of Christmas in 1950s America isn't the carols or the jingles or the chatter of department stores. It's this, the hush that follows, the peace that settles when the day has ended, and the lights are dim, the soft promise that tomorrow will begin again in warmth and familiarity. You step once more into the gentle silence of the neighborhood, the door closing softly behind you with the hush of a sigh, and the cold folds around you like a blanket, freshly shaken from the line. The air smells of pine and chimney smoke, and a sweetness that might just be imagined. The ghost of cookies baked somewhere nearby. Snowflakes drift downward in slow spirals, catching the golden halo of each street lamp before vanishing into the shadows of neatly lined lawns. It's late now, though the world feels alive in its stillness. The lights of suburbia twinkle like grounded stars, every house carrying its own quiet rhythm, every window glowing with its private warmth. You walk along the sidewalk, your boots sinking gently into snow that crunches in soft, steady beats. To your left, a row of identical houses stretches into the distance, each one a modest variation on a shared dream. Small porches, white picket fences, tidy lawns buried under snow, and roof lines glittering with strands of colored bulbs. These neighborhoods are still young, born from the post-war boom, and filled with families who have come here seeking the same thing: safety, peace, a place to start again. Historians would later call this the golden age of American suburbia. But tonight, standing here beneath a frozen sky, it feels more like an age of faith. Faith in tomorrow, faith in progress, faith in the fragile beauty of an ordinary life. Ahead, a house glows brighter than the rest. In its front window stands something strange and luminous, a silver Christmas tree made of aluminum, its branches catching every glimmer of light like threads of frost. A color wheel turns slowly beneath it, bathing the tree in shifting shades of blue, red, green, and amber. Each hue slides into the next, with the calm rhythm of a heartbeat. You pause to watch, mesmerized. There is something futuristic about it, a promise of modernity dressed in tinsel and wonder. A few families have embraced these trees, a symbol of progress, a shimmer of optimism, a playful rebellion against tradition. Others whisper that they're too artificial, too cold, yet here, under the soft glow of night, it feels strangely alive, breathing light into the darkness. Further down the street, a father kneels in the snow, untangling a stubborn string of bulbs, his breath puffing white in the air. A plastic Santa glows faintly beside him, his red suit illuminated from within by a single bulb that flickers with effort. The man pauses, adjusts a wire, and the light steadies again. His child watches from the porch, small mittened hands clutching the railing, eyes bright with admiration. There is something profoundly human in that moment. The ritual of decoration, the patience of preparation, the desire to make beauty out of wire and cold. Cultural historians might debate whether these suburban displays reflect competition or community, but standing here watching this father and child, it feels simpler. This is devotion in its most domestic form, a prayer offered through color and persistence. You keep walking. Every house tells its own story. One porch glows with candles in every window, each flame flickering in syncopated rhythm. Another displays a hand-painted nativity scene, tucked beneath an awning, Mary and Joseph gazing down at a wooden child whose face is worn smooth by decades of care. Across the street, a group of neighbors gathers, bundled in thick coats, holding steaming mugs and laughing softly as their breath curls into the night. Someone's radio plays faintly from an open garage, the melody of silver bells slipping into the air like smoke. The song mingles with the sound of conversation, the clink of mugs, the soft shifting of snow underfoot. You pass a parked station wagon dusted with frost, its chrome glinting like a mirror. Through its rear window, you catch a glimpse of evergreen branches, a wreath wrapped in newspaper, and a cardboard box filled with ornaments. Some glass, some paper, some made by hand. The car door opens, and a mother steps out carrying a bundle of ribbon and garland, her face flushed from the heater inside. She smiles at her husband, who follows with another box marked lights, fragile. The soft domestic choreography unfolds in silence. Her careful hands, his determined patience, the children's muffled excitement behind the frosted windows. They are building Christmas one small act at a time, as though assembling a world worth believing in. At the corner, you stop beneath a street lamp whose light catches the slow drift of falling snow. The flakes tumble lazily, as if even the weather has surrendered to the calm of the season. Somewhere far off a dog barks once, then the sound fades into the wide stillness. The houses around you glow steadily, their windows golden, their edges blurred by frost. The world feels balanced here, between effort and ease, between old traditions and new beginnings. It is the rare kind of peace that doesn't announce itself, that doesn't need to be earned, that simply exists because people believed it could. You take a long, quiet breath, watching it curl into the cold air. The night feels endless and safe. And as you walk on, you realize that this hum of distant radios, this flicker of colored bulbs, this steady rhythm of heartbeats behind thin suburban walls, is the sound of the 1950s Christmas. Not loud or showy or perfect, but gentle, deliberate, hopeful. A season lived in small gestures, in shared glances, in quiet belief. The street grows quieter as you walk, each step pressing softly into the snow until your footprints trail behind, like a faint story that will be gone by morning. The houses around you are dimming now, one by one, their windows fading from gold to shadow as families drift towards sleep. The lights that remain glow faintly blue through drawn curtains, the pulse of television still murmuring in the distance. A kind of lullaby shared across thousands of homes. You can almost imagine all of America breathing in sync, the great collective sigh of a nation that has worked, hoped, and dreamed its way into this gentle decade. You pause beneath a tree bare of leaves, its branches black against the starlit sky. Snow clings to its limbs, catching light in thin lines of silver. The air is perfectly still, the kind of stillness that makes you aware of your own breath, your own heartbeat, the small warmth you carry against the vast cold. Somewhere nearby, a curtain shifts. A child, perhaps, sneaking one last look out the window for Santa, for reindeer tracks, for proof that the night still holds magic. The faint sound of a wind chime answers, almost too quiet to hear, a single note trembling through the air before it fades. Down the street, a porch light flickers and you see a figure step outside. A man in a robe, holding a cup of coffee, steam curling in front of his face. He stands there for a long time, just watching the snow fall. Maybe he's thinking about the year that's ending, or about the one that's waiting somewhere beyond the horizon. Maybe he's thinking about his children asleep inside, about the mortgage he's still paying, about the quiet pride of a man who built a life from the rubble of war, and now measures success in laughter heard through thin walls. He lifts his cup once more, takes a sip, and disappears back inside. The door shuts softly, leaving the night whole again. You keep walking, letting the rhythm of your footsteps become the story's pulse. The world narrows to the simple details, the crunch of snow underfoot, the slow drift of flakes onto your coat sleeve, the halo of each street lamp stretching through the cold. You pass a mailbox draped in tinsel, a sled leaning against a fence, a forgotten pair of mittens stiff with frost. Each small thing feels alive with memory, each object humming quietly with its own kind of light. A car passes slowly, its headlights soft and yellow, its tires whispering against the packed snow. Inside, a couple speaks in low voices, their silhouettes brief and tender before the car disappears into the bend of the road. Silence returns like the tide, wrapping the street in its familiar hush. For a moment you close your eyes, and it feels as though the entire decade is holding its breath, suspended between innocence and change. And then you hear it, faint, distant, almost unreal, the sound of a church bell striking midnight. The tone is low and rich, echoing through the snow like ripples across still water. One ring, then another, and another, spreading through the neighborhood, through the sleeping town, through the frozen quiet of America in winter. You imagine families stirring faintly, half awake in their warm beds, smiling in their dreams. You imagine mothers tucking blankets tighter, fathers whispering goodnight to children who have already fallen asleep. You imagine the steady hum of love that fills every small home, unseen but unbroken. You stand there beneath the bell's fading echo, and something inside you softens. You realize that Christmas in 1950s America wasn't about extravagance or perfection or spectacle. It was about the return to warmth after years of uncertainty, about small rooms full of laughter, about the flicker of candlelight against clean kitchen counters, about the hope that ordinary life could finally be enough. It was a quiet celebration of survival, of beginnings, of belonging. The snow falls thicker now, blurring the world into a watercolor of white and silver. You turn toward home, wherever that might be, the cold nipping softly at your cheeks, the air filled with the faint sweetness of pine and distance. The houses fade behind you, their lights dimming into tiny stars scattered across the dark. And as you walk, your breath slow and steady, you carry with you that lingering warmth, the hum of the radio, the glow of the television, the laughter of children, the promise of another morning. You whisper goodnight to the decade, to its dreams and its flaws, to its soft, ordinary beauty. The night accepts it quietly, folding your words into its falling snow. and for a long, long moment, everything feels exactly as it should, still, gentle, and at peace. The hours slip by unnoticed. The town lies behind you now, its lights fading into the snowy horizon, leaving only the open road stretching ahead, long, empty, silvered by frost. You walk slowly, listening to the soft hiss of the wind as it moves through telephone wires and the far-off hum of a passing car. The air feels colder here, cleaner somehow, and the sky above is impossibly wide, a bowl of ink scattered with quiet stars. Out here, America feels endless. Every field and fence line, every frozen creek and distant farmhouse seems to be breathing the same slow rhythm of winter sleep. A neon sign flickers faintly at the next bend, its red glow trembling against the night. A diner, open late. The glass door fogs with warmth every time it swings open, and you can see the faint movement of someone inside. A waitress refilling coffee cups, a man in a hat reading a newspaper, a few travelers wrapped in the soft fatigue of long journeys. You step inside, the bell above the door chiming weakly, and the warmth greets you like an embrace. The air smells of coffee, fried onions, and something sweet, maybe pie cooling on a metal tray. The floor is checkered, worn smooth by boots, and the counter gleams under the pale hum of fluorescent light. A jukebox sits in the corner, its chrome edges smudged with fingerprints, its soft glow pulsing like a heartbeat. The music it plays is low and warm, something by Nat King Cole or Rosemary Clooney, a song that seems to know it's meant to keep you company more than to impress. You slide into a booth near the window, where frost creeps delicately along the edges of the glass. Outside, the snow continues to fall, thick and steady now, muffling even the sound of the wind. Inside, time moves differently. The waitress, tired but kind, pours you coffee without asking. Her name tag says June. Her smile says stay as long as you like. You wrap your hands around the mug and let the warmth soak into your palms. The coffee tastes strong and faintly bitter, the kind that lingers on the tongue and wakes the mind just enough to think clearly, but not enough to disturb the peace. At the counter, two truck drivers talk quietly about the weather and the long road ahead. A soldier in uniform sits alone, his cap resting on the table, his gaze lost in thought. A pair of teenagers share a milkshake, whispering about plans they'll probably forget by morning. The jukebox clicks softly between songs, and for a moment, the only sound is the buzz of the neon sign outside and the gentle rattle of snow against the window. You realize that this, too, is part of Christmas. The quiet spaces between gatherings, the places where strangers rest, where small kindnesses keep the cold at bay. A clock on the wall ticks past 1 in the morning. The waitress hums along to the next tune, a slow carol that sounds both old and brand new. The soldier smiles faintly, tapping the rhythm on his cup. The teenagers laugh softly. The truck drivers nod to each other and rise to leave, their coats brushing against the doorframe as they step into the snow. The bell above the door rings once, then the diner returns to stillness. You sip the last of your coffee and glance outside. The road is nearly invisible now, just faint tire tracks disappearing into the night. You pay in cash, $1 and a few coins left neatly under the saucer, and step back into the cold. The snow swirls around you in small spirals, catching the neon light and scattering it like glitter. Behind you, the diner's sign hums steadily, a beacon of color in the white expanse. You stand there for a long moment, watching the flakes drift across the road, thinking of how many people tonight, across all these towns, across all these states, are seeing the same thing, the same sky, the same snow, the same fragile, luminous quiet. And then you start walking again. The road stretches onward, a thin ribbon of light vanishing into darkness, and your footsteps sound almost like music in the snow, slow, rhythmic, timeless. The town has long disappeared behind you, its glow reduced to a faint shimmer on the horizon, and the road has narrowed into a quiet ribbon winding through empty fields. The snow lies deep here, untouched, except for the slender path you make with every step. Fences appear like ghostly lines drawn across the white, their wooden posts capped with powdery crowns. In the distance, the outline of a barn emerges, dark, sturdy, and silent, and beside it, a farmhouse whose windows pulse with a soft orange light that leaks gently into the cold. You approach slowly, your breath rising in slow curls, the air sharp enough to sting your nose. The smell of smoke reaches you first, the clean, earthy scent of oak burning in a stove, followed by something fainter and sweeter, like molasses or cinnamon. It's the kind of scent that belongs to places where time moves slower, where work begins before dawn and ends when the stars take over the sky. As you draw near, you hear the distant creak of wood settling under frost, the quiet shift of animals inside the barn, and a wind that whistles through dry corn stalks left standing like forgotten sentinels of another season. The farmhouse door opens just enough to let a sliver of warmth escape, and you see a man step out, pulling on his coat. He's middle-aged, with a face shaped by weather and routine, the sort of man who rises early even on Christmas morning because cows don't know holidays. His boots crunch against the frozen steps as he carries a metal pail toward the barn, his breath glowing in the lamplight. A dog follows, a wiry mutt with patient eyes, moving close to his heels. Inside the barn, the air glows amber from a single hanging lantern. Steam rises from the animals as they shift in their stalls, their breath mingling with the cold in soft clouds. The man moves quietly, speaking to them in a voice just above a whisper, words not meant to be understood but felt. The sound is rhythmic, the creak of a stool, the gentle splash of milk into the pail, the sigh of the cow, the brush of straw. It's the kind of peace born, not from stillness but from repetition, the comfort of knowing exactly what comes next, of belonging to the same cycle year after year. When he's done, he sets the pail aside and stands for a moment, just listening. The barn feels like its own small world, warm, alive, and faintly humming with the heartbeat of winter work. Back in the house, the first light of morning begins to bloom, pale and golden, pushing softly through the kitchen window. Inside, a woman stands at the stove, her hair wrapped in a scarf, her hands steady as she pours batter into a pan. The air is thick with the smell of coffee and butter, and the table behind her is already set, plates stacked neatly, a pitcher of milk, a small vase holding a single sprig of pine. Two children appear in the doorway, their feet bare, their eyes bright with the kind of excitement that only Christmas morning can summon. They hover there for a moment, unsure whether to burst in or wait for permission. The woman turns and smiles, and that's all they need. The kitchen fills with motion. Laughter, footsteps, the clatter of chairs. The father returns, his boots dusted with snow, his face flushed from the cold. He hangs his coat by the door and kisses his wife's cheek without a word, just a small gesture of habit and gratitude. The dog circles the table once, tail wagging, before settling near the stove. The children chatter about stockings and Santa and what they think they heard in the night. The parents listen with soft amusement, exchanging those quiet looks that say, "Let them believe a little longer." Outside, the snow glows under the rising sun, the whole world painted in shades of pink and gold. Smoke curls lazily from the chimney, and frost sparkles on the fence posts like tiny stars. The fields stretch outward in silence, endless and serene, holding the memory of work done and rest earned. Inside, plates clink, laughter hums, and somewhere in the background, a radio plays a gentle carol, its signal faint, its warmth undeniable. You watch this scene unfold, and it feels timeless, as if every farmhouse in every corner of the country is quietly living this same moment. No grand celebrations, no glittering trees, no noise, just warmth, routine, and love shaped into small gestures. A meal shared, a story told, a fire tended. The father pours syrup over pancakes. The children giggle as it pulls too fast, and the mother pretends not to notice. The dog sighs deeply in his sleep, paws twitching as if chasing something in a dream. And the morning sunlight, thin but bright, stretches across the room, touching every face, every plate, every corner of that little world. It is Christmas morning in 1950s America, not the kind of Christmas written on postcards or captured in ads, but the quiet kind that belongs to the heart, the smell of bread, the warmth of coffee, the promise of another year beginning in peace. The landscape widens again. Beyond the farmhouse fields, the rails stretch east to west, thin lines of steel cutting through miles of frozen plain, gleaming faintly under the silver wash of moonlight. Somewhere in that vast quiet, a train moves. It comes slowly at first, a low hum, a distant vibration through the snow, until its rhythm becomes a steady heartbeat against the dark. You can almost feel the weight of it, heavy and certain, a pulse of light and motion carrying small pockets of life through the endless night. Inside, the air is warm and faintly metallic. Soft yellow bulbs sway gently with the motion, glowing against polished wood panels and the muted brass of luggage racks. Passengers sit wrapped in their own small silences. Soldiers on leave, families returning home, strangers half asleep with books slipping from their hands. The train rocks them all in the same slow rhythm, a cradle made of iron and distance. Outside the window, the world blurs, white fields, black trees, the faint reflection of their faces drifting across the glass. Now and then a farmhouse light flashes by, then vanishes, leaving only the snow and the hum of the wheels. A porter moves down the aisle, his steps practiced and soundless. He adjusts the curtain here, picks up a fallen scarf there, offers a nod to an old woman who murmurs thanks without waking fully. Somewhere further back, the faint chime of cutlery rings from the dining car, a late pot of coffee being poured, perhaps a final slice of pie served to a sleepless traveller. Even here, Christmas lingers, a sprig of holly pinned above the service window, a paper star taped to the glass, a radio playing low through static. The melody is slow and distant. "I'll be home for Christmas" carried through the corridors like a whisper. You wander through the cars, passing rows of sleepers. A boy curled beneath a wool coat, his toy train clasped in one small hand. A woman resting her head against the window, her reflection dissolving into the darkness. Two young men talking quietly about the year to come, their voices barely louder than the wind. Everywhere there's the same gentle pulse of movement, the same shared drowsiness. The train breathes like a living thing, sighing at every curve, humming through every mile. You stop between cars for a moment, where the cold sneaks in through the cracks, and look out at the night. The snow is falling faster now, swirling past the glass in tiny storms of light. Each flake catches the glow from the windows and vanishes almost instantly, as though the whole world were dissolving into soft white silence. The rails glimmer ahead, bending into darkness, and somewhere beyond them waits another town, another set of lights, another small world dreaming its own Christmas. The whistle sounds, long, low, mournful, and beautiful. It rolls across the plains and fades, leaving behind only the echo of motion. You feel the vibration through the floorboards, through your shoes, through your chest. It is the sound of a country still awake in its sleep. Farmers tending stoves, watchmen at bridges, soldiers writing letters by dim lamps, lovers waiting at faraway stations. The train gathers speed, its rhythm quickening for a moment before settling again into the steady lull that carries everyone toward morning. You find a seat near the back, beside a window slightly fogged with breath. The glass is cool under your fingertips. Outside, the horizon is softening, a faint pink glow creeping along its edge. The first hint of dawn, or perhaps the last flicker of midnight. It's hard to tell which. The porter passes once more, quieter now, and switches off a few of the lights. The car dims to a gentle gold. Someone coughs softly, another turns in their sleep, and then all is still. The wheels keep singing their endless refrain, a slow metallic lullaby carrying you deeper into the dream of another time. And as the night thins and the first traces of morning stretch across the snow, you realize that the whole country, towns, farms, cities, trains, is breathing in rhythm, connected by light, by distance, by hope. The train moves slower now, as though even the steel itself can feel the approach of dawn, its rhythm softening into a muted heartbeat, while the horizon begins to blush with the faintest light. Outside the windows, the world is still wrapped in snow, every field and treetop glazed in a silver that seems borrowed from dreams, and as the first rays of morning rise through the mist, the countryside begins to wake, not in sound but in colour, pale rose and gold, spreading quietly across the whiteness. Inside the car, the passengers stir one by one, the spell of night lifting gently rather than breaking. A man rubs the fog from his window with the sleeve of his coat. A mother straightens the blanket around a sleeping child. A soldier leans his forehead against the glass and lets out a long, slow breath that clouds and fades before his eyes. The porter moves quietly down the aisle with a pot of coffee, the thin aroma of it curling through the car like a thread, the kind of smell that promises the simplest miracle, that the day has begun, that warmth can be held again in your hands. The whistle sounds once, low and patient, echoing off the frozen hills, and in the distance a small town appears, a collection of roofs softened under snow, a church steeple rising from the centre, smoke rising in calm ribbons from chimneys. The train slows, wheels whispering over the tracks, brakes sighing with the relief of the long journey ending. You can see the station platform now, nearly empty, just a few figures waiting with their collars turned up and their breath streaming pale in the cold. The sign reads the name of a town you do not know, but the feeling of it is universal, that quiet pulse of arrival, of somewhere new and familiar at the same time. The conductor steps down first, his boots crunching on the frost, followed by the porter who stretches his arms against the morning light. The passengers rise in slow unison, yawning, stretching, buttoning coats, collecting parcels and hats, and the fragile packages wrapped in paper and string that mean something to someone waiting at home. When the doors open, the air rushes in, sharp and pure, filling the car with the scent of snow and pine and distance. You step down onto the platform, your shoes slipping slightly on the icy wood, and look around at the small station bathed in the first real sunlight of Christmas morning. The snow here glows almost blue at its edges, untouched except for a few footprints leading toward a narrow road that winds into the heart of the town. A few cars are parked nearby, coated in frost, their chrome glittering faintly like jewelry. Somewhere a dog barks once, then silence folds over everything again. The sound of the train behind you deepens, the engine settling into stillness, steam drifting upward in slow spirals. You turn back and see faces at the windows, people hesitating for one last look before the journey continues, eyes bright, tired and full of unspoken stories. The station master nods to you, his scarf tucked neatly into his coat, and tips his hat in greeting. He doesn't ask where you came from or where you're going. In towns like this, people understand that travel itself is reason enough. A single wreath hangs from the door of the waiting room, its ribbon faded but proud. Through the window you glimpse a stove glowing faintly red, a chair tipped back against the wall, and a stack of newspapers left for whoever might care to read them. The smell of coal and coffee lingers in the air, and for a moment you could almost believe that the world has forgotten how to hurry. You begin to walk toward the town. The road curves gently between drifts of snow, the sound of your footsteps crisp and satisfying. The houses here are small but sturdy, their windows fogged with warmth, and from one of them you hear a faint radio playing a Christmas hymn. The melody floats out into the morning air, tender and imperfect, as if sung for no one in particular. You pass a bakery where the door is propped slightly open, steam billowing into the street, along with the smell of bread and cinnamon. Inside, a woman in an apron moves quickly between shelves, arranging loaves that gleam golden in the light, and when she notices you passing by, she smiles without surprise, as though every stranger on Christmas morning is just another neighbor on their way home. Further along, a man stands outside a hardware store, sweeping snow from the steps in wide, slow arcs, the rhythm of his broom almost meditative. He pauses, leaning on the handle, and looks toward the rising sun, as if to measure how bright the day will become. A child runs past him, pulling a sled, a blur of wool and laughter that echoes off the quiet walls of the street. Behind a cafe window, a couple sits with steaming mugs, their hands resting close but not touching, their conversation invisible, but their comfort unmistakable. Every doorway holds a small piece of morning life, and together they form a kind of unspoken harmony, the music of a town breathing itself awake under the slow gold of a winter sunrise. You stop near the edge of the square, where a tall spruce stands at the center, its branches heavy with snow and a few strands of tinsel that glint shyly in the light. A bench sits beside it, dusted with frost, and when you rest there for a moment, the whole world seems to pause with you. The air is filled with that fragile quiet that only comes once a year, when everything has been done, everything given, everything still waiting to be remembered. Somewhere in the distance a church bell rings once, soft and deliberate, followed by another and another, until the sound rolls gently across the rooftops like a blessing. You sit there listening, the cold numbing your fingers but not your heart, and realize that what you've been following all this time, through towns and kitchens and living rooms and trains, is not a place at all, but a feeling, a thread of warmth that connects every house and every traveler, every dreamer and every child asleep beneath a quilt. The train behind you lets out a final sigh of steam, the echo of its whistle dissolving into the morning sky. The passengers who remained aboard lean against their windows, watching the town shrink slowly behind them as the rails carry them onward to the next stop, the next homecoming, the next Christmas morning waiting to unfold somewhere down the line. You watch until the last car disappears beyond the curve of the tracks, the sound fading into nothing, and what remains is only the stillness, the snow, and the steady glow of daybreak, spreading across a country that for one brief moment feels entirely at peace. The road from the small town widens until it becomes a ribbon of highway that stretches endlessly beneath the pale sun, cutting through the frozen quiet of a country still half asleep. The light has softened now, no longer the sharp gold of dawn, but a gentle wash of silver that spills over every hill, every fence, every drifting plume of chimney smoke rising from distant farms. You walk along the shoulder of the road, your breath forming slow clouds in the still air, and the sound of your steps mixes with the faint hiss of tires far away. Out here the landscape feels infinite, a mosaic of fields hidden under snow, telephone poles pacing beside you like sentinels keeping rhythm with your thoughts. Every few miles a billboard appears, its colors faded by wind and time, smiling faces selling coffee, gasoline, or good cheer, and even they seem softer in the light of this morning, as though aware that today is not a day for hurry or noise. Beyond the next curve the highway rises gently, and from the crest you can see the world unfolding, small towns scattered like constellations across the plain, each one sending up its slow plume of smoke, each one glowing faintly at the center like a candle behind glass. In the distance a line of cars glints along the snow-edged road, families traveling to grandparents' houses, soldiers heading home, young couples beginning the tradition of the first shared holiday. You imagine the warmth inside each vehicle, thermoses of coffee passed between gloved hands, radios murmuring soft carols through static, the drowsy hum of engines blending with laughter, and the sound of paper wrappings rustling in the back seat. As the morning brightens, the world begins to stir. You pass a gas station where a single attendant in a heavy coat wipes the frost from a pump handle and waves as you go by. The small building behind him glows with the orange light of a heater and the faint scent of oil and dust. Across the road a diner sign buzzes to life, and a row of trucks gathers slowly in its lot like cattle seeking shelter from the cold. The air smells faintly of diesel, coffee, and snow, the unchanging perfume of every American road. Somewhere overhead a formation of geese crosses the white sky, their wings black silhouettes against the light, their slow arc disappearing toward the south. You keep walking, and the landscape changes almost imperceptibly from country to edge of city. First the low warehouses dusted with frost, then the clusters of houses, then the faraway shimmer of glass and steel where morning reflects itself in hundreds of tiny squares of brightness. The city waits, quiet for once, its streets muffled by snow and its towers exhaling thin columns of smoke that dissolve in the winter air. In this light, even the tallest buildings look gentle, softened by distance and by the kindness of morning. A train horn sounds again far to the east, and the echo carries over the fields like the memory of a song. For a moment everything, the road, the smoke, the snow, the stillness, seems to pause and listen. It's as though the whole country is aware of itself, breathing slowly, resting in the fragile balance between solitude and connection. Every person you passed in the night, the mother at the stove, the father in the yard, the strangers on the train, feels suddenly near, as if all those tiny circles of warmth you've walked through have stretched invisible lines toward one another, creating a single great map of light across the continent. The wind changes direction. It smells faintly of salt now, the breath of the ocean carried far inland. The sun climbs higher but remains soft, its warmth more a promise than a presence. You stop for a moment on the side of the highway, close your eyes and let the sound of the world seep in, the low hum of distant cars, the rustle of snow shifting on fences, the faraway call of a church bell marking the start of morning mass somewhere in a town you cannot see. When you open your eyes again, the horizon seems to shimmer as if the entire country were waking together, stretching its limbs under the same pale sky. Christmas Day has truly arrived. It lives now in every sound, in the whistle of the wind, in the click of wheels on asphalt, in the muffled laughter of families unseen. It exists in the glow of every window, the scent of every meal being prepared, the stillness that settles between songs on the radio. You walk on, the road unfolding endlessly ahead, and you realize that there is no real destination, only this movement through time, through memory, through the quiet pulse of a world at peace with itself for one morning. The snow glitters around you like scattered light, the air tastes clean and bright, and the warmth that began in a single home now seems to fill the entire horizon. You take another slow breath, letting it cloud and fade before you, and for the first time since the journey began, you feel the vastness of it all. The trains and kitchens and living rooms and small towns connected by nothing more than hope, and the simple human wish to be near one another. The road stretches onward, pale and gleaming, and you follow it into the calm heart of the day, where the sun waits above a world washed clean, and the memory of 1950s America drifts quietly into the light. By noon the road has followed the curve of the land all the way west until the air begins to taste faintly of salt and metal, and the sound of wind carries something deeper in its throat, the slow, constant breathing of the sea. The fields give way to dunes coated with frost, the fences to driftwood and tangled wire, and the light becomes softer, paler, as if the sun itself were hesitating before it touched the water. You walk until you can see it, the long grey line of the Pacific, stretching so far that the horizon looks less like distance than like memory itself. The snow stops here, breaking apart into mist where it meets the sand, and the world feels divided between two great silences. The lands hush behind you and the sea's slow rhythm ahead. Down the hill, a small harbour lies folded against the shore, wooden piers slick with ice, gulls turning in patient circles above the masts of fishing boats that rock gently in the tide. A few of them are strung with lights, the bulbs glowing faintly even in daylight, colours soft against the overcast sky. One boat bears the name Ever Hopeful, the paint chipped, the letters uneven, and yet it shines in its own quiet way as if the name itself were a prayer whispered to the horizon. Along the pier a handful of people move slowly, sailors, dockhands, townsfolk carrying baskets and wrapped parcels. They speak in low voices, words lost to the wind, but their gestures are unmistakably kind. A pat on the shoulder, a wave, the small ceremony of saying Merry Christmas before parting again. You follow the pier to its end, where the wooden planks creak under your boots and the world opens wide before you. The sea rolls in gentle folds, pewter and white, each wave rising and falling with the calm patience of breath. Out there, at the edge of sight, A freighter moves steadily north, its hull dark against the water, its wake shining briefly like a path cut through liquid glass. For a moment you imagine that the train, the roads, the fields and the small towns all lead here, that every light you followed through the night has been pointing toward this quiet meeting of earth and ocean. The sound of a distant horn drifts across the water. It could belong to that ship or to another vessel somewhere beyond the mist, and it carries the same tone of longing and reassurance that every traveler's heart recognizes. Behind you, the harbour town begins to stir. Church bells ring faintly, their echoes softened by fog. A cafe door opens, letting out a brief wash of warmth and the smell of chowder and coffee. A group of fishermen gather around a truck, sharing cigarettes and stories, while their laughter rises in white puffs of smoke. On the hill above them stands a line of small houses facing the sea, each with its own narrow porch and a single string of lights trembling in the wind. Laundry flaps from one balcony, frozen in motion like prayer flags. The windows flicker with the glow of midday fires, the light moving like heartbeat under the roofs. You stand there a while longer, leaning on the rail, the wood cold beneath your palms, and think about how far the story has carried you, from the city streets to the quiet kitchens, from the farms to the rails, and now to this edge where everything ends and begins again. The ocean seems to gather it all, every note of music, every sigh of steam, every echo of laughter, folding them into its endless rhythm. Even here, at the continent's rim, the spirit of the season lingers, not loud, not showy, but woven into the very air, a promise that no matter how far people travel, warmth is never entirely left behind. A gust of wind lifts the mist for a moment, revealing the line where the sea meets the sky, a faint band of brightness spreading slowly like a smile. The bells in the town ring once more, clearer this time, their sound travelling over the water and back again. And as you turn to leave the pier, following the narrow path toward the cluster of houses on the hill, you realize that this too is Christmas. The hush before the waves, the taste of salt on the wind, the quiet knowledge that somewhere inland, across miles of snow and sleep, others are looking out their own windows toward the same morning light. You walk until the boards of the pier become sand again, the dunes rising behind you, the footprints you leave quickly filled by the tide. The sky brightens, the gulls wheel lower, and the sea continues its steady breathing. It feels as though the whole of 1950s America, its highways, its trains, its kitchens, its laughter, has exhaled into this single moment of calm, balanced perfectly between memory and motion. The horizon waits, wide and silent, and you let the sound of the waves carry you forward into it, step by slow step, until the wind is all that remains, and the story continues without needing to be told. By afternoon, the fog begins to thin, and the ocean takes on the color of polished steel, bright enough to make you squint and yet still soft, like light remembered from another life. The tide rolls in slow breaths, carrying small bits of ice and seaweed that glitter briefly before sinking back into the foam. On the horizon, a single cargo ship moves eastward, a dark shape against the silver, its deck strung with holiday garlands faded by salt. Somewhere beyond that line of water, beyond the reach of sight, another continent waits beneath its own blanket of snow and bells. For a moment the distance feels smaller than it should, as if the same cold light resting on these waves could easily stretch across the world and touch another shore. You sit on a piece of driftwood where the dunes curve into the beach, your coat pulled close against the wind. The smell of salt clings to your gloves, the taste of it settling on your tongue, and when you breathe you can almost hear the faint echo of every voice that spoke before morning. The carolers in the town, the waitress in the diner, the children whispering over cookies, all folding together into the steady hush of the sea. It occurs to you that the entire country you've crossed is still breathing in rhythm with this water. Somewhere a farmhouse stove burns bright. Somewhere a train hums through the snow. Somewhere a single radio plays the same song you can just barely catch now, a melody riding the wind like smoke. A gull lands near you, its feathers puffed against the cold, one leg tucked under its body. It studies you with that sharp, indifferent calm that only wild things possess, then lifts again, rising into the wind, until it becomes a flicker of white swallowed by light. The sky opens wider, clouds breaking apart to reveal patches of clean blue, and sunlight runs in trembling lines across the sea. It looks like the world has just been washed and laid out to dry, the edges still wet, the air carrying the scent of renewal. You realize, sitting there, that this is what the decade itself feels like, something fragile and new, uncertain and hopeful, stretched between the memory of storms and the promise of calm. Behind you, the town bells ring again, this time joined by the distant horn of a ship leaving the harbour. The two sounds blend until they are indistinguishable, until it seems the sea itself is speaking, low, steady, eternal. You stand and brush the sand from your coat, watching as the ship moves further out, its trail of smoke curling upward like a thread tying this shore to the sky. The wind picks up, sharper now, and carries with it the faint smell of pine and chimney soot from the houses above. It smells of Christmas even here, at the edge of the world, proof that warmth has a way of travelling farther than reason would suggest. You begin to walk along the waterline, your footprints dark and fleeting on the wet sand. Each step brings the soft crash of waves beside you, the whisper of foam curling around your ankles before slipping back. The sunlight glints off shards of shell, off the smooth glass washed ashore, off the faint ripples where the sea touches the land. The sound is endless but never loud, the repetition almost hypnotic, like the heartbeat of something vast and kind. The ocean doesn't ask for anything. It simply exists, reminding you that the world continues quietly and without interruption, no matter how many Christmas mornings rise and fade. You look once more toward the horizon and imagine the same morning unfolding elsewhere. Lights flickering in villages across Europe, families setting tables, trains rolling through snowfields half a world away. The thought makes the world feel smaller, rounder, gentler, as though every breath taken anywhere is part of the same cold air moving across this sea. The century itself seems to sigh, a long exhale of peace before the next wave of time begins. You stand there until your cheeks sting with wind, until the water laps at your boots, until the sun begins to dip again toward the far side of the world. When you finally turn back toward the town, the path behind you has already vanished, the tide smoothing every mark you made. The horizon glows faintly pink, and the first lights in the harbour flicker to life like scattered embers. You walk slowly, the sound of the waves following you up the dunes, the gulls calling softly overhead, and it feels as if the entire journey, the cities, the homes, the railways, the snow, has folded into this single moment of quiet return. Somewhere a door opens, laughter spills out, and the smell of something baking drifts on the wind. The world has begun to light its lamps again, one window at a time, and the long story of Christmas in 1950s America keeps unfolding gently into the evening, as if it might never really end. By the time you reach the top of the dunes, the light has changed completely, the blue of the afternoon fading into a pearl-grey twilight that smooths every edge of the land and sea, until nothing seems to have a beginning or an end. The town below glows softly, its handful of streets strung with the same warm bulbs that lit the diner signs and living room trees thousands of miles inland. The harbour water mirrors them, trembling lines of gold stretching toward you across the tide. The air smells of wood smoke and salt, and somewhere a door closes, the sound carrying clean and sharp through the cooling dusk. You walk down toward the houses, following the thin ribbon of a road that winds between tufts of frozen grass. Windows shine on either side of you. In one, a man bends over a radio, tuning until a station crackles clear. In another, a woman lifts a child to hang the last piece of tinsel on a small tree balanced on a table. Their motions are quiet, deliberate, part of the same choreography that has played out all across the country since morning. Small acts of care performed without audience, forming a pattern that only distance allows you to see. A cat crosses the road ahead of you, leaving paw prints that vanish as quickly as they appear. The sound of the sea never fades, always there at the edge of hearing, a reminder that the world is larger than the moment, but made of moments just like this. At the bottom of the hill, the main street opens into a square no bigger than a city block. A bandstand stands empty in the middle, its railings wrapped in garland, a few paper snowflakes still clinging to the posts. Around it, the shops have drawn their curtains but left the lights on, displays of books, records, and tools gleaming faintly through the glass. A bakery window fogs with steam, and through it you can see a young couple cleaning the counters, their movements mirrored by the soft glow of the ovens behind them. They laugh once, the sound muffled, and for an instant it feels like you're watching the idea of happiness itself. Ordinary, unassuming, real. The first stars appear above the rooftops, thin and hesitant, but soon there are more of them, scattered in loose constellations. The sky darkens to deep blue, the kind that holds warmth instead of cold, and the wind slows as if the entire coast is taking one long breath. Lamps flicker on along the pier, one after another, the reflections stretching across the water like golden threads tying land to sea. You sit on a low wall near the edge of the square and listen. Somewhere a record begins to play, the faint trumpet of an old jazz tune, slow and melancholy, wrapping itself around the night. A car passes, tires crunching on frozen gravel, and the headlight beams brush across the snow before fading into distance. The smell of dinner drifts through the air. Baked fish, bread, something sweet cooling on a sill, and with it comes the low hum of conversation. People greet each other softly on the street, voices blurred by scarves and the hush of the evening wind. A door opens behind you and laughter spills out, bright for a heartbeat. Then the door closes again, and the sound becomes memory. It strikes you that the whole of this decade, this country, this night, could be described exactly that way. Moments of light opening briefly into the quiet, shining just long enough to prove they were there. You stay until the cold begins to press gently against your coat, until the lamps flicker higher along the cliffs, and the horizon disappears into darkness. The harbour settles into its rhythm again. Ropes creaking, waves tapping softly against the hulls of moored boats, gulls calling once before silence takes them too. Overhead the sky deepens into black velvet, the stars steady and innumerable. The air tastes clean, the kind of cold that clears rather than bites, and when you breathe out you can see your breath drift upward like smoke joining the constellations. For a while you imagine every place you've passed still glowing behind you, the farmhouse, the diner, the train, the living rooms full of television light, each one a lantern scattered across the vast dark of the century, all burning from the same small spark of hope. You realize that you haven't left them. They move with you, stitched invisibly into the air, their warmth carrying forward into this seaside night. The town clock strikes 7, a single clear tone that ripples across the harbour and fades into the sea. Another tone follows, then another, slower, softer, until it feels less like time passing than like time breathing. The hours slip past quietly, measured not by clocks but by the deepening of the dark and the steady rhythm of waves folding themselves against the shore. The harbour has gone still now, the voices of the day faded into memory, leaving only the slow creak of rope against wood and the whisper of water gliding between the piers. Far out at sea a ship's light drifts like a moving star, its reflection trembling across the black surface until it shatters in the ripples. The air has cooled enough that every breath turns instantly to frost, and the world smells of salt and smoke, and the faint sweetness of burning pine. The town lies behind you, its windows dim, its laughter folded into dreams. Only the lamps along the pier remain awake, each one wrapped in a soft halo, guarding the quiet like sentinels. You walk along the edge of the beach where the tide has retreated, the sand hard and shining under the moonlight. Your footsteps leave faint impressions that fill slowly with silver water, vanishing before you can look back. The sea moves in long, patient lines, the foam curling toward your boots and pulling away again, as if testing how far the world will let it reach. Every few moments a wave breaks slightly louder than the rest, and the sound rolls through the night like a heartbeat. The sky above is vast and utterly clear now. A black dome scattered with stars that seem close enough to touch. The moon hangs low, pale and immense, its light turning the ocean into molten glass. You stop and watch the reflections stretch and break, each wave carrying a fragment of brightness before folding it into the dark again. Somewhere behind you, a door opens and music drifts out for a brief moment. A trumpet, a woman's voice, the slow sway of a dance that ended hours ago but refuses to disappear completely. The sound travels over the dunes, fragile as smoke, and then fades, leaving only the wind. You can almost imagine the couple still dancing in their small living room, the record spinning long after midnight, their shadows moving slowly across the floor. All across the coast, in houses and hotels and cabins hidden among the pines, people are sleeping under the same sound of the surf. Their dreams carry the same pulse as the tide, the same soft insistence that the world will keep turning, that light will come again. The beach stretches endlessly ahead, each curve of sand leading to another, the line between sea and sky nearly invisible. You walk without thinking of direction. The cold nips at your face, your gloves stiff with frost, but there's a comfort in the solitude, the kind that comes only when everything unnecessary has fallen away. The decade itself seems to breathe here, its memories dissolving like footprints in the tide, the factories, the suburbs, the trains, the soft hum of radios in faraway kitchens, all of it reduced to this single pulse of ocean, this endless repetition of rise and fall. You realize that this sound has outlasted everything, that it spoke before people built their towns and will continue long after the last light has faded from the pier. A gust of wind lifts your coat and fills the air with sand that sparkles briefly before falling back to earth. You close your eyes and for an instant you can feel every place you've traveled through folded inside you. The warmth of the diner, the smell of coffee and diesel, the laughter of the children at the farmhouse, the glow of television screens flickering behind closed curtains. They're all here, layered within the stillness, the sum of 1,000 quiet moments that once seemed ordinary but now feel sacred. You open your eyes and look out across the water again, where the moonlight paints a single shining path toward the horizon. It looks like a road made of light, straight and infinite, stretching into the unknown. You stand there until your breath slows to match the rhythm of the sea. The night has reached that hour when even time feels suspended, when the world forgets to move. Somewhere inland, the first newspapers of the morning are being printed, the first milk trucks loaded, the first fires stoked back to life. But here, at the edge of everything, nothing stirs except the tide. You take one last step toward the water until the foam touches your boots, and then retreat, smiling at the small defiance of it. The ocean withdraws again, as if smiling back. Above you, the stars shimmer in the still air, and you have the sudden quiet certainty that you are not alone, that every light, every heartbeat, every sleeping soul in the country is connected by this same hush, this same fragile peace. The moon climbs higher, its reflection stretching farther, and you feel the pull to keep walking, not toward anywhere in particular, but simply onward, following the glow along the water's edge. Each step sounds like a page turning. Each wave erases what came before and writes it anew. The story has no ending now, only this motion, slow, steady, eternal, carrying you deeper into the night and forward into the waiting dawn. The horizon begins to pale again, first as a whisper of light that barely touches the rim of the sea, then as a slow, steady bloom that spreads across the surface like ink in reverse. The long black of night softens into blue. The stars loosen their grip and sink one by one into the brightening sky. The world exhales. The sound of the tide is the same as it has been all night, but it feels different now. Not lonely, not endless, just alive, as if the water itself has been waiting for this moment of return. The first gull cuts across the air, its cry thin and clear, and its wings catch a streak of gold from the coming sun. The light touches the edges of the dunes, the roofs of the houses, the wet sand where your footsteps have melted into nothing, and suddenly the entire coast glows as though someone has drawn breath into it. You watch the sun emerge, slow and deliberate, a coin of molten copper rising out of the horizon. Its reflection stretches toward you in a trembling ribbon of fire that rolls with each wave. The warmth doesn't reach your skin yet, but you can feel it in the air, the faint promise of it. And that's enough. Behind you, the town begins to wake. The clatter of a back door, the faint clang of a bell in a bakery, the squeak of a cartwheel on the road. Smoke curls from chimneys, thin and blue in the morning light. Somewhere a radio clicks on, a voice murmuring weather and headlines, the same ritual that will open every day for decades. You can hear the clink of dishes, the splash of water in a sink, the half-sung hum of someone greeting the morning before words have found them. A fishing boat pulls away from the dock, its motor coughing, the deck slick with frost. The men on board move slowly, shoulders hunched in their coats, their breath steaming in the air as they coil ropes and check the nets. One of them waves toward the shore, a brief silhouette against the rising sun, and you lift your hand in return. The gesture feels older than language, older than the decade, older than any border, just the quiet acknowledgement between travelers who share the same horizon. The boat moves steadily out, leaving a pale wake that curls behind it like handwriting. You walk along the beach again, this time toward the edge of the harbor where the waves are small and rhythmic, tapping against the rocks like a clock marking time. The sand gleams beneath the thin layer of water that rushes forward and pulls back again, each motion wiping the surface clean. Every few steps you find something the tide has left behind, a shell, a piece of driftwood, a glass marble so worn that it's turned cloudy and smooth. You turn it in your fingers and realize that it's not broken, only transformed by time and movement and patience. The thought makes you smile. The sun climbs higher. The light shifts from copper to gold to the soft yellow of morning milk, flooding the world with warmth so gentle it almost feels imagined. The cold retreats. The sea changes color again, deepening from steel to blue. The air hums faintly the way it does when the day is new, and nothing yet has been decided. You can feel the weight of the entire country stirring behind you, towns and farms and city blocks, opening their eyes to the same sun, the same day, the same quiet hope that begins every morning. Even the faraway echo of a train whistle seems part of this rhythm now, its sound carried across miles of air like a heartbeat that never really stopped. You pause near a cluster of rocks and look back. The footprints you left before are already gone, erased by the new tide. The sea has kept only the memory of them, folded invisibly into its endless motion. It feels right that way, that the story leaves no trace, that it exists only in movement, in breath, in the space between night and morning. The gulls gather in the air above you, their calls sharp and bright against the vastness. The light catches their wings and turns them into quick flashes of white, rising and falling in the glow. And then for a moment, everything aligns. The sound of the waves, the warmth on your face, the faint hum of the town behind you, the light stretching across the water like an open road. It is still the 1950s here. The air still holds that particular balance between exhaustion and optimism, between what has been and what might yet come. The decade breathes through the world as the morning does, full of quiet resolve. The ocean glitters, the sun rises higher, and you keep walking along the sand, each step carrying you forward through time, through memory, through light. The wind rises gently, warm now, carrying the smell of salt and bread and smoke. The world feels clean, renewed, and impossibly vast. Somewhere far inland, bells will be ringing, children will be waking, breakfast tables will be filling with light. But here, on this bright, endless coast, the morning stretches forward without end, a promise written in water, a song without words, a story still unfolding. By late morning, the sky has turned a clear and impossible blue, the kind that belongs only to winter when the air is sharp, and the light seems to reach farther than in any other season. The sun hangs higher now, the shadows of the dunes shorter, the last traces of frost melting into thin rivulets that sparkle as they slide toward the sea. The tide has gone out, leaving behind a wide plain of wet sand that mirrors the sky so perfectly it feels as if you are walking between two heavens. Your reflection stretches beside you, wavering with each ripple of water, and for a long moment it seems as if the world itself has paused to listen to the sound of your steps. Every footfall is soft and hollow, every breath a small cloud drifting into the distance. The town has fully awakened behind you. From where you stand you can hear faint music from a cafe radio, laughter spilling into the open air, the deep hum of an engine starting somewhere up the hill, the smells of the morning, wood smoke, salt, baking bread, mixed together into something so familiar it feels older than memory. The fishermen have already returned, their boats gliding into the harbour with slow dignity, nets heavy and shining. Children run down the pier to greet them, their shouts echoing over the water while gulls circle impatiently overhead. The men lift their catch with practiced movements, calling to each other, their words shaped by wind and waves into something rhythmical and almost musical. Life has resumed its ordinary rhythm, the sacred hidden in the simplicity of movement and repetition. You walk inland toward the small road that threads through the town and into the hills beyond. Each house you pass is alive with small human sounds, the slap of a screen door, the ring of a telephone, the rustle of laundry hung out to dry. A woman sweeps her porch, pausing to smile as you pass. A group of teenagers stand by a parked car, polishing its chrome bumper until it gleams. The radio balanced on the hood playing a slow tune about love and second chances. Their laughter rises into the cold air and fades, as light as the smoke that curls from their breath. Everything feels poised between stillness and motion, as if the world is aware of its own beauty but too modest to speak of it. Beyond the town the land rolls open again, dotted with barns and orchards, and the occasional billboard advertising soap or tires or a brand of cigarettes that promises a brighter tomorrow. The road hums beneath your feet, warmed slightly by the sun, and the fields on either side glimmer with the thin crust of remaining snow. Here and there a tractor engine coughs to life, a dog barks once and then quiets, a rooster announces the day as though it were new to him. Farther up the slope a farmhouse roof shines wet with melted frost, and you can just make out the movement of people in the yard. A man splitting wood, a child chasing the steam from his own breath, a woman hanging linens that glow like banners in the light. The scene is so calm, so perfectly ordinary, that it feels almost sacred, the holiness of things that ask for nothing except to continue existing. At the top of the hill you pause to look back. The ocean lies stretched beneath you, glittering beneath the noon sun. The town a cluster of quiet roofs along its edge. The smoke from the chimneys curls straight upward now, unbothered by wind. From here the world looks complete. The sea, the town, the fields, the far-off line of mountains faint in the haze. You realize that you've been moving through a single long breath since the night began, that the story of this Christmas, of all Christmases, isn't contained in moments but in the spaces between them. The silence after laughter, the stillness between waves, the pause before a door opens. It is in the ordinary gestures that no one remembers but everyone lives by. A car passes on the road behind you, its tires hissing on the damp asphalt. Inside, a family waves, their faces bright with the joy of arrival or return, and you lift your hand in greeting. The sound of their engine fades into the distance, replaced once again by the quiet of the hills. The air feels warm now, the chill of the morning gone, replaced by the faint sweetness of sun on thawing earth. The world hums softly, not loud enough to be music, but steady enough to be a song. You close your eyes for a moment, letting that sound wash through you. The journey you've made through towns and kitchens and train cars and fields feels gathered here, distilled into a single note of contentment that hums somewhere beneath your ribs. When you open your eyes again, the light has shifted. The shadows have lengthened just slightly, hinting at the slow turning toward afternoon. A cloud drifts across the sun, softening its glare. Somewhere down the road a dog barks again, and a door opens, and the familiar world continues. You take a deep breath and begin walking once more. your path leading forward into the day's gentle brightness, into the unfolding hours that will carry you quietly, inevitably toward evening. The world stretches before you, calm and endless, and the air tastes of salt and warmth, and the faintest trace of hope. By the time the sun begins to dip again, the whole world has softened, the air has lost its edge, the light has gone golden, and the ocean below shimmers with that quiet fire that lives only in late afternoon. You walk back down toward the harbour as the sky begins to change, blue melting into amber, amber into rose, and the faintest trace of violet along the horizon, where day gives itself up to night. The gulls glide low, their wings catching the last warmth of sunlight, and the boats rest against the tide, their hulls sighing gently in the rhythm of the water. The town glows once more, every window lit, the scent of dinner drifting through the air, onions, smoke, and the faint sweetness of bread. It feels like returning to a song you half remember, one that begins before words and ends after silence. A church bell rings somewhere up the hill, slow and deliberate, and its echo slides through the streets like a pulse. You pass the same bakery you saw that morning, its windows fogged again, its shelves almost empty now, and through the glass you can see the baker wiping his hands, his movements tired but content. The streets are calm, the laughter quieter, and the sky above the town burns in shades of copper and rose until, at last, the first stars appear. You pause on the pier one final time. The lamps have come on, halos trembling over the dark water, and the sea stretches outward into a horizon that no longer feels distant but familiar, like something that has always been waiting. You think about everything you've seen, the diners, the trains, the small-town streets, the kitchens, the lights strung across porches and windows, and you realize they were never separate moments but parts of one great heartbeat. America in the 1950s, breathing in and out, believing in the small and the good, building its hopes from warmth and work and ritual. The wind rises gently, brushing your face, carrying with it the layered scent of pine, salt, and the faint sweetness of chimney smoke. The tide swells, whispering softly against the rocks. Somewhere far inland, another family gathers around a table. Another child listens for sleigh bells. Another mother hums a carol while washing the last dish of the night. Every window in every house flickers with the same light, not bright, not loud, but steady, and together they form a constellation across the country, glowing quietly against the dark. You close your eyes and breathe it in. The warmth, the silence, the peace. The night settles over the town like a blanket, and the stars sharpen above the sea until the whole sky looks alive. For a long time you stand there, listening to the waves, until even they begin to sound like the slow turning of memory itself. When you finally step away from the pier, the footprints you leave behind glimmer briefly in the lamplight, before the tide washes them smooth. The last thing you hear is the echo of laughter from some faraway window, followed by the soft eternal hush of the sea. Then the sound fades, the world stills, and you understand that Christmas in 1950s America was never really about what glittered or gleamed. It was about what endured. Warmth, faith, ordinary love that filled small rooms and held the cold at bay. The ocean breathes once more, slow and deep, and you turn toward the lights of the town, that little world of golden windows glowing against the vastness, and begin walking home, guided by the sound of the tide, the hum of the night, and the quiet, endless promise that there will always be another morning.